Shout out to Edward and Driver's Ed. And people wonder why I listen to Edward and why we like listening to Edward, even though Edward rambles and Edward doesn't stay on track. But the thing is, Edward pops in good ideas throughout his whole stream. He brings in so many different ideas from stuff that he's heard, stuff that he's picked up, stuff that he's internalized, and Edward just drops gems, sometimes from him, sometimes from other people. So there's a lot of stuff that I hear that Edward has internalized, and I said, oh, I hear that, I hear this, I hear that he picked up this, I hear that he picked up that. But, there's something that he said about the difference between the marriage 1.0, which is old-fashioned marriage, which is husband and wives, and marriage 2.0, when we talk about partners. Okay. As a preamble about that, husband and wives are what we call monogamous marriage, or even non-monogamous marriage, because they're still husband and wife. Were sex roles that have been developed over hundreds of thousands of years, probably more like a couple 100,000 years. These ideas, a way of organizing people, have been developed. And I was listening to FD Signifier talk about that husband and wife were patriarchal marriage. It's not, okay? Husband and wife, as we call them, go back 150,000 years, okay? The Jawa tribe, they still do it. They still have husband and wives, and they still do it basically the same way we do it. It's arranged, but the thing is, they basically do it the same way we do it, believe it or not. So it's not patriarchal. I wish people would actually study what the fuck a patriarchy actually is, instead of guessing. Anyhow, that's an aside. But 1.0 had sex roles that were developed according to our biology and not according to a teaching, okay? Whereas 2.0 is what we call sexless or genderless. When we talk about partners, partner is a gay term, okay? Is a LGBTQ term, because it was weird calling another man your wife, or weird calling another woman your husband. It was weird when you introduce your wife, and as far as a sex role, and a guy comes up in a tuxedo and a bow tie, people are taken aback. So adopted a secondary term, which is called life partner. Okay, when you couldn't get married, life partner, which evolved into partner as far as LGBTQ. And intersectional feminists actually adopted into partners. So your partner doesn't have a sex, or doesn't have a gender, as we put it, because sex roles don't exist anymore. Okay, now we have genders, because sex is biology, which is the old 1.0 marriage, and gender is what? Performance, how you're taught, how you carry yourself. That's a gender. That's the difference between a gender and a sex role. Gender is not tied to your biology. You could be a trans woman and marry a guy, and you are partners. And your gender is female, because that's where you perform your role. Your gender is female, according to the modern term of what we call mating. But the point I want to get to is that also what Ed said, and was brilliant, I'm going to give him this, it was actually brilliant. He says partnerships were never meant to be permanent. It's like in business. A partnership is not a covenant. It's an arrangement. And arrangements, whether business, social, or whatever it is, are not to be, or never meant to be permanent. They're meant to be dissolved. They're meant to be fluid. have a partner, you don't have to be, quote unquote, married. You don't have to have a marriage contract to have a partnership. You can just draw it up legally, and it'll stand up in court, just like a marriage contract. And there's other laws that come with a marriage contract that's according to the state, that you don't get in a partnership, but it's an equivalent. But a partnership is not built to be forever, okay? A marriage, going back 100,000 years, was not meant to be dissolved. A marriage is actually built and meant to be a lifetime. That's why they put the thing, "to death do us part." That's why it made it so difficult for a marriage to be dissolved, because it was the bedrock of what society was actually built upon. House, wealth, children, families was built upon the bedrock of marriage, husband and wife. It's equivalent of a car versus a house. A car, for the most part, unless you're really lucky, is not meant to last a lifetime. Most cars, I'll say 99% of cars, do not last a lifetime. And the ones that do, we call classics, right? They can be restored, or they can be well maintained. It might be in a garage somewhere. You see an old-fashioned whatever, right, from the 1930s or 1940s in a garage that's 80 years old and it's still around and still runs, but it's so rare that we put it in the news when we see one of those, right? Because cars are not meant to last past, at most, 10 years. 7, 8 years, that car has to be scrapped. You got to take it, smash it, recycle the metal, make it into something different. Unless you're lucky and you maintain it and you restore it, and you might have it a good 10, 15 years, maybe 20 max, which is a good run if you're lucky. That's the same thing with a partnership now. What's the average length of a partnership marriage, right? 2.0, 8 years. Unless if it's a black partnership or marriage, it's 5. In the old days, like my mother, like my aunts, death do us part. My mother's with my father, until he passed. My aunt was with my uncle until he passed. About 60 years, which is a lifetime. That's the old marriage. Marriage is like a house. We have houses, like my house, right? My house, my house will be turning 100 years old in a year. That's how long it's been around. They replaced, I think a few years ago, the water pipe, the main water line on my street. That pipe had been down there since 1910. It took a whole 2 months to dig that bad boy up, right? Because it was not meant to be dug up every year. It was not meant to be replaced. It was meant to be there a lifetime or several lifetimes. In the case of that water pipe, the houses that were built on this strip, on the street, most of the inhabitants are dead, or all the inhabitants are dead. 2 or 3 generations are dead. That's how long the street and these houses have been around. That's like marriage. That's like marriage 1.0. Husband and wife were not meant to be dissolved. That's how come marriage is so sticky. That's how marriage, when you put the marriage contract on yourself and try to get out of it, they make it hard for a reason. You're not supposed to get unmarried. It's not supposed to be dissolved. You're not supposed to get married and then get divorced in 2 years with a bunch of kids. You fuck everything up. So we're trying to take something that was meant to be a lifetime, meant to be multi-generational. Because when you get married as a teen, as 20-year-old, you're supposed to have kids, grandkids, and great-grandkids. That marriage is supposed to last 3 generations. much like a house, much like this house, okay, much like this street, multi-generational. It wasn't designed to be dissolved. That's what Edward was saying. Marriages are hard to get out of because they were not designed to be broken. Now there's new partnership where you're looking for fucking partners and you think you're gonna be in it for 4 or 5 years and get unhappy and break it up. The reason it fucks everything up is because they're not meant to be broken. You're trying to make something that was supposed to last 3 generations, last 4 to 5 years and be fluid. And you wonder why everything's all screwed up. You wonder why the kids are raised willy-nilly. Your kids are not meant to be raised by 4 or 5, 6 different people. Now, in the South, under conditions because of the environment where people, where men and women could not stay together, or not because of lack of want to, is because of the conditions, because of the poverty, because of the high death rate of the men, the low lifespan of the men. You had transient parents. So you had to have a community around it to pick up the slack. But it's a survival tactic. And guess what? Our culture suffered for it. We're proud of it because we survived, okay? It's like surviving cancer. Okay, you survived, but hell, you got a lot of nicks and cuts and parts that aren't there anymore. Your body has been decimated by chemo. It's killed all your healthy cells. Your body is racked with it, okay? You survive, but doesn't mean your body is a 100% functioning, viable candidate. It's not. It's damaged. Our culture is damaged because of it. Because we're forced to make something that's supposed to be last multi-generational into a fluid situation. And now what has happened is that the modern society, modern women has adopted the same freaking model. And some of the same kind of idiosyncrasies and problems are showing up in not only black people, but white people. And not only here in the United States, it's global now. You have societies coming apart because they have to adopt the same model of partnership. A lot of that is structural, right? A lot of that is structural. People change as you urbanize them, as you give them more choices, as you put more stress on them, as you make it more expensive to raise children. But that was exactly right. What we have taken was something that was supposed to be a house and made it a car. Nobody builds a house, puts in a foundation, builds a house, builds a room so that the house can be torn down 5 years later or 10 years later. That house is built to have not only you, your children, but also your grandchildren own it and live in it. I was talking to a white guy, man. His father is from Finland. And he showed me his ancestral house in Finland. He showed it to me, right? Still there. He's been there. He owns it. His father's died. He inherited it, right? It was built back in the 1500s. That's how long that house has been around. It's been maintained, but it's been around for 500 years. Some things are not meant to be transitory. Some structures, physical and social, are meant to be multi-generational. And some things are meant to be disposable. Like it or not, cars are disposable. Your washing machine is disposable. Your TVs are disposable. They're going to wear out, they're going to wear down, they're going to be replaced. They're not built to last a generation or several generations, but your house was. And what we have done with marriage and mating and having children is turn something that was supposed to be multi-generational, supposed to be a house, and made it a car. In fact, we made it almost like a smartphone where you turn it in every 2 years. We made marriage and this kind of male-female relationship into a disposable item. That's why we call ourselves partners, because after the partnership is no longer useful, we dissolve it. But we treat it like it's supposed to be permanent. Anyhow, just a thought. This is BGS out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.